In this lesson, we'll be controlling this little armature, which is a series of nested movie clips with these animated buttons that you see below here. I will give you a demonstration before we build one from scratch, but let's take a quick look at the timeline right now. We have 4 layers right now, and we're running everything on one single frame. So at the very top, I have my actions layer, which is my code, and we are working with JavaScript. And then I have another layer dedicated to the armature itself called animation, and it's this movie clip. I'm just going to switch over to my selection tool here. Now if I click on that, you'll see movie clip in the properties, and I have attributed a instance name so that I can speak to that through code. Okay. Then down below here, we have a layer for our buttons. 6 buttons, 3 sets of buttons, one for a start and stop of each element of the arm. So we've got a yellow element, a red element, and the green element. These buttons actually are all derived from a single library item and simply have a different tint applied to give them a new color. Okay, if I go to the library, it's just called fade button, and I believe by default it's gray perhaps. Okay. Let's go back here, and finally down here I've just got one called background. I could have probably put this on the buttons layer as well, but just to differentiate my content here, it's just the little labels beneath the buttons. And if there was anything else to go on the page that's decorative, likely that'd be the best spot for it. Okay, so let's just do a quick test movie, and we'll look at this in action, and I'll explain it a bit further here. I'm just going to go up to Control, Test Movie. As you know, there's several ways to test the movie. So we'll just test this in the browser here, and I do have it currently set at centered. So here's our 3 sets of buttons. Now, I did mention that they are animated. They do fade up and down on mouse over and mouse away. So in fact, they are buttons nested inside of movie clips. Okay, and it's just one button again that's been applied 6 times and given a different tint each time. But when you mouse over it, there's a little animation where it fades from like 20% opacity to 100% opacity, and then when you roll away, it fades back to that original opacity. Okay, so when I mouse over, I can click and stop on the stop buttons, and I'm stopping each different colored section here at a time. And again, I have a corresponding start button for each section. So I can start the yellow up again, I can then simultaneously have the red running, and I can stop the yellow while the red's running. They are independent of each other. Okay, I'll start it up again here though. And we'll start the green part of the arm here as well. Okay, so again, the buttons are actually movie clips with buttons inside of them, of course, ultimately. But there's a little animation fading them up and down based on the mouse over and the mouse out. Okay, so I'll just stop them all one more time, and then we can go back and start to build a file from scratch. But there we go. Okay, so we're back in Animate now, and I'm going to start a brand new file. So let's go File, New. And I'm just going to use the standard size, but make sure you are on HTML5 canvas for the platform type. And click Create, and immediately I'm going to do a save. So Save As or Save. And I've got a designated folder here, and you should make a little project folder for each of these files when you're working in HTML5, as it will generate other support files when you test it and export it. So just call it your last name. And I believe this is lesson 4, but if it's not, just use the appropriate lesson number with an underscore. Okay, and let's just click Save here, and we're good to go. Just for the sake of my eyes, I don't like staring at the bright white, so I'm going to just bring that color down a bit to my school bus yellow here. And we'll start by just setting up our layers, and we'll start with the nested animation. I think is the best place to start. So I'm just going to create 4 layers here. And the top layer I'll call Actions. That's where my code will end up. Second layer down, I'm going to call Animation, which is where the little armature is going to get created. Third layer down, I'll call Buttons. And technically they are movie clips with buttons inside. And this is sort of optional, but I'll create a layer for the background just for the static graphic elements. In this case, it'll just be the text elements for the buttons. Okay, and just save. So I think the best place to start is to create the little animated armature. So we'll put that on our animation layer. So let me select that layer now. which selects the first keyframe here. And I'm going to go to my rectangle tool and start to draw what will be the forearm basically, or actually the upper arm. So I'm just drawing a vertical rectangle here, and I had already set my stroke to 4. If I go to my properties here, we'll select that by double clicking it and designate a color fill here if you need to change it, and a stroke, and I've again set the stroke weight to 4, and I'm good with that. So I need to convert that right away to a movie clip. Convert to symbol, movie clip, and I'm going to call this one green_arm, and then it's inside of this movie clip that we will create all the animation. All right, so we need to double click it in order to get inside the movie clip's timeline. So there we are inside of the green arm movie clip with its new timeline. Okay, now to animate this, it again has to be a movie clip inside of this timeline, so I'm going to modify that again. Convert to symbol, movie clip. I'm just going to call it green, and we'll click there. All right. Now with this, I'm going to want to have it rotate sort of at the shoulder. So I can do this now or later. So I'm going to do it now, where I can move the axis, which is based on this center point. Okay. To do that, we choose our free transform tool, which allows us to go in and move that point. So right there is like where the shoulder's intended, and I'm going to swing it back and forth, up and back this way. Okay. Now I want to put the forearm in red and then sort of the hand in yellow. They will have to be nested, meaning I have to go inside of this movie clip, add to it, add to the timeline, and then we will do the same thing again for the yellow part of the arm. Okay, so I'm double clicking now on this movie clip. This one's called green. Double click it, and at this point I'm going to add a new layer. I'll name this layer green. Okay, and add a new layer, and I'll call this one red. Okay, and I will actually draw a brand new red box. So I'm just going to change my colors here, and then draw and position it roughly where I want it to go, and I'll say, how about there? It's a little shorter, a little smaller than the green one, and it's running horizontally. I need to double click that to select as well. And of course it should be on that red layer, not on the green layer. I'm going to convert that to a movie clip so that I can also do a rotation on that and change its axis of rotation. Convert to symbol, movie clip. We'll just call this one red. Okay, and again go to my free transform tool, and I'll put that where I assume the elbow should be, and right there. Now I could move the whole piece, but I think I'm good where it is. But I could move that all if I wanted to. Okay, so I'm just going to put that right about there, roughly speaking, where the elbow should be. Again, I should save as I go here. All right, so we'll do the third and final component, if you will, which will be nested in the red movie clip. So let's double click that to go inside of its unique timeline. Again, I will rename that original layer red and create a new layer, and I'll call it yellow. Okay, yellow, hit my enter key, and I'll proceed to choose my rectangle tool, change the fill color to the yellow, and I'll just draw a shorter appendage right here, about like that. Again, in order to do a rotation with that, it needs to be a movie clip. We won't be going inside of that movie clip, but it needs to be a movie clip on this layer in order to create a rotation and to change the axis. So here we go, one more time, convert to symbol. Movie clip, we'll name this one yellow. Okay, and I will go with my free transform tool. I'm actually going to move this up a bit like that and put the axis closer to the edge here. Still over the red, so it'll look like it's pivoting on the red, okay? All right, let's just save all of that. Now we're ready to animate this. And since we're already at this level in our nested movie clips, why don't we start where we're at right now? So I'm going to animate these over a 60 frame span, which is 2 seconds. And if I determine later I want to speed it up or slow it down, I can do so after the fact. But for now, I'm going to set it up at frame 60. So I'm inside, the movie clip called red, which is nested in green, arm. And it's meant to move the yellow arm, okay? So let's just drag down on frame 60 in both of these layers, and I'm going to hit F5 to span, And I'm just clicking away here, and I'm going to reselect the last frame in my yellow there and hit F6 to create a keyframe. That way I'm preserving the start position. So frames 1 and 60 will be the same. And I'll do the halfway point on frame 30. So I'll just select that frame and F6 to create a keyframe. And here is where I'll do a rotate. That's going to sort of be the halfway part. So I'm just going to rotate it inwards like that, and something like that. And at this point, I can apply a tween to this layer. So I'm going to select the layer by the name, which selects all of the keyframes. And right click here, and I will apply what's called a classic tween for this. All right, and I should just scrub back and forth to make sure it's animating. And there we go. And you saw again that halfway point, and then it kind of bounces back, right? So we're good with that one. Let's just save. And let's go up now and do the red part of the arm. So let's go up a layer. And again, on my free transform tool, I'll do the rotation, but let's set up our frames here. So let's again drag across frame 60 downwards and establish a span with F5, and then I'm going to come back and select that last frame in my red layer, hit F6 to create a keyframe, again to preserve that initial frame, and then come to the middle here and select that middle frame and hit F6 to create a keyframe again. And here is where I'll do the rotate right about there, I guess. I don't want the hand crossing over to the green, so I'll just kind of go about there. That's the halfway point, and let's just select the whole layer again. Right click in the frames, create classic tween. All right, and just to be sure, scrub your playhead. All right, there we go. Let's just save as we go. And we've got one more section to go. So we'll go up another level here and we'll animate the green arm. Now this one only has the one layer. It's all we need. And we'll just click on frame 60 so I can go straight to creating a keyframe here. F6. And go to the middle here with my playhead and then select that middle frame. And F6 again for another keyframe. And I'll just rotate that. Kind of going up like that. And that'll be the middle of the rotation. Select the whole layer. Right click on it and apply a classic tween. Okay, and again scrub to make sure that it's animating. There we go. The animation's done. Let's just save that. And we'll do a quick test movie to determine the speed, if you will. Okay, so I'm just going to press the little play button in the top right corner again, test movie. And there we go. And it's looking okay. I think I'm going to slow it down a bit. So I'm just going to span. I'm going to add some span to the animations. But other than that, I think it's all good here. All right, so let's just go back to animate and do a little bit of tweaking on the timelines. So trick here is to just push the span out. So just put your playhead anywhere between the keyframes and hold F5. So I'm going to double it up. So where I see frame 30's keyframe, I'm going to push that out to frame 60. So in total, I'll go to frame 120. All right, so there's the first half. And if I went too far, I can go Shift F5 to back it up. And then move my playhead in between these two keyframes. Maybe I'll just put it closer to the end here. And hold down the F5 key until it hits. Now if you go one at a time, it might be a little easier near the end to be exact. And there we go. So I'm going to do that in each level. So I'm just going to double click to get inside of that movie clip, and again place my playhead in between the keyframes without selecting any of the frames, and just hold my F5 key till I get it spanned out. And again, I got to go back one here, and then I'll push it over here and F5. Okay, and I have one more level to go down in. So double click in there, and we'll expand this one out as well. F5, and just tweak. I seem to always go past on that first one. But a Shift F5 will just back it up for you. So it's no big deal. And let's push this guy out. There we go. I'm just going to save my file right now. File save. So I've adjusted all three levels of animation to be half the speed, therefore twice the duration on the timeline, right? So let's do another test movie here and get a sense of that. There. For the sake of testing this, this is much easier to see that things are moving or not, okay? So the next step we're going to do is we're going to do 3 pairs of buttons, one to start and stop each colored element from rotating. Okay, so let's just close this and we'll head back over into animate and start on the buttons. Just call my timeline back up and we'll go right up to scene 1 again. And I'm just going to put them on the buttons layer, so I will select that layer. Now, since these buttons are animated, meaning they're going to fade up on mouse over and fade away on mouse out, they're actually going to be inside of a movie clip so that I can nest that animation in both directions. All right, so we'll start though by being on our buttons layer and creating our basic button, if you will, with the oval tool. And I've just got it set to white fill and no stroke. And I'm just going to create a perfect circle with my shift key down, and I'll say about that size is good. Okay, just go to my selection tool and select that. And I'll start by converting it to a movie clip. So modify, convert to symbol, movie clip. And let's see here. I think I'll just call it fade button. It's a movie clip though, remember that. Fade button, movie clip. Okay, and the action takes place inside of that movie clip. So we're going to go inside of there, and with that selected, I'm going to turn it into a button. Modify, convert to symbol, this time button, and I'll just call it button. That's what it'll appear as in the library, and it'll be the one and only button inside of there. Okay, there we go. Now it's a button. I'm not even going to do a mouse over for it or anything, but it will function as a button. What we want to do though is we do want to animate it, fading in and out, and we'll need a little bit of code for that. So I'm just going to name this layer button, and we'll put another layer in for the code, call it actions. Okay, so I want it to be a fairly quick fade, maybe up 10 frames and back 10 frames. So I'll start by keyframing frame 10 on my buttons layer, F6, and I guess I'll keyframe it back to its original state again at frame 20. So that's another F6 at frame 20. Okay, so I have to make sure this state is the same as that. And that's fairly easy. I'm just going to be changing the opacity. Okay, so it's going to start and stop with the button with its alpha. I'm going to say, let's say 25 to 30. I'll say 30. We'll start at 30. Okay, so I need to go back to frame 1 now and do the same thing. I could have started that way and then changed it in the middle. Nonetheless, here we are, alpha at 30%. Okay, so I just need to apply a tween to this now, so I'm going to select the layer name, right click on the frames, and again I'm going to go to classic tween today. Classic tween. So it fades up and then it fades back. All right, let's just save that. Now we're going to need to control that, so I will need some stop actions starting on first frame, and then once again when it hits frame 10. Okay, and then we'll also put some code in there to address the mouse over, and in frame 10 the mouse out. So we'll start though by just selecting that first keyframe, call up my actions panel. So we're going to do a little bit of coding right now. And I'll use the wizard, and I want to do a stop frame. So stop this timeline next with this frame, finish. Okay, I'll do the same thing over on frame 10. So I'm going to keyframe frame 10 in my actions layer and apply the exact same code. Stop this timeline, click my next button with this frame, finish and add. So it just added a little JavaScript to basically pause on that frame. So let's save that. And let's create the trigger for it. So we'll go back to frame 1 here. You need to select the actual frame when using the wizard, at least. Add using wizard. And this time I want it to be on mouse over. Oh, you know what I need to do actually? Let me cancel this. I need to give my button an instance name. And I guess I'll have to do it the same instance name on frame 10. So that's just while I'm on frame 1, select the button. Instance name, I'll just call it button underscore BTN. And I'll do the same thing on frame 10 because I also want to address its code there. I probably should have just copied and pasted, but as long as they're both the same, that's what matters. Okay, again, let's save. Okay, I think we're ready now. Let's go back to frame 1. And we will add using the wizard. And what I want to do is on mouse over, play the playhead. So it's simply play. So I'm just going to say play. This timeline. Next. What's the trigger? The trigger is a mouse over. Which button? The only one that I have here, button underscore btn, finish and add. All right, and then I'll go to that frame at frame 10, and I'll use a similar concept, except it'll be on mouse out. So when the mouse exits, it will trigger the playhead to go again. So let's again start with the play command. All right, this timeline, next. This time it will be on mouse out, and we have a mouse out right here, same button, finish and add. Let's just save that. And we can test that. We can do a mouse over and a mouse out, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so let's go up to test movie here. There you go. And there's your fade out. Fade in, fade out. So we're going to use the one button, and we're just going to apply tint to it to differentiate it visually on the stage. But there you have it, a fade up button. So it's actually a movie clip that does contain a button that gets animated with respect to its opacity. Now, there is an issue if you go too fast. It sometimes glitches. I'll show you a band-aid for that, but we don't need to apply it. But I will show you sort of a band-aid that might help with that in my original file. Okay, so let me go back to the timeline here and going to the older original file. Inside, what I did here is on frame 20, I actually added a second button behind here, an invisible button, and we've used this technique before. It says on mouse over, trigger to playhead to play. I did that as well as the mouse out, and it just is a little more of an insurance policy. So you know what? I think I will do it after all. Okay, so let's add that little insurance policy. So I'm going to add a new layer. I'll have to put it at the bottom, but I'll name it out button. Okay, I'll drag it to the bottom. I'll start by just creating a really big circle. Okay, and let's see here. Maybe it'll make it a different color. Ultimately it's going to be invisible, so the color doesn't matter. But here, just so I can see it apart from the white button. So why don't I create a keyframe there right now? F6. Yeah, it only goes on frame 10. And let's start to draw. Just holding my shift key down. So I'll make it fairly big, all right? And then I'll move it with my selection tool. And try to make it, you know, like centered with the button in front of it. Okay, so I'm going to convert that to a button. Modify, convert to symbol. Button. I'll call it out button. Okay, there we go. Definitely want to save here. And I'm going to make it an invisible button. So I'll double click it. And again, we've done this before, but to make something in a button invisible, you remove the content from the up state and move it over to the hit. And in this case, we want nothing in the up, over, nor down state, just the hit state. So when I exit this button, it should appear as that aqua representing an invisible button. Just like that. Okay, so let's give that an instance name as well. Highlight it. I'm going to call it out button underscore btn. There we go. And we'll apply some code. We'll say on mouse over play. So I need to select the frame. It looks like I put my code accidentally here for the button. I can see that with the little letter A. I'm going to move my code up, and that was me not paying attention. So you know what, before I do the code for this, let's go back here. It would work fine where it is, but just to stay clean here, I'm going to select this code. And I can see it here. Let me, if I expand this out here, frame 1 in my buttons layer. Right here, I'm going to select all of that and cut it. Command X. And go up to frame 1 and just add it to this layer. so that all my code is going to stay up there. Now, you can have code, as you notice there, on any keyframe. But to keep it a little bit more sane, I'm going to move this button layer stuff. It was done unintentionally. As you can see here, it's an easy fix. I'm just cutting it. And then I'll go up to frame 10 in my actions layer and just add it to what's already there. Good to go. Okay, and I'm just going to go back up to the top layer here for a second and then click my way back down. And there we have it. Okay. That was not intentional, but again, easy, good way to show you how to move code around if you have to. It's just cut and paste. What's important is that it goes where it's supposed to, and this is in alignment on that keyframe. So let's select the frame it's intended to put this code in. Add using wizard. Play. This timeline. Next. And this will be on a mouse over. Remember, it's the invisible button. It's kind of like leaving the island and you're crossing the water. When you cross the water, you're engaging the invisible button. So on mouse over. Out button. Finish and add. I'll call that our little insurance policy. Now I'm going to drag this so that it only exists on frame 10. Okay, I don't want that button out here while it's animating. I don't think it would hurt anything because it's just a play command, but let's just keep it clean here, like that. And there we go. We've got the full-on, insurance policy fade away button. Let me just save that again and give it another test in the browser. Play movie. There we go. And it's just more reliable with that added second button, which is invisible. But when we depart that button area, it does seem to fade fairly well. Okay, so we're good to go here. A lot of the heavy lifting is done. I'm just going to hide this for a little while. Go back to my timeline and come back up to scene 1. Okay, so we're in my buttons layer. I'm just going to duplicate this. I'm holding the Option key down and my Shift key down to duplicate. It would be the Alt and Shift key on a PC, and then I'm going to make 3 sets. So I'm going to grab both of these guys and duplicate those with my Alt key down, and to constrain it I'm holding the Shift key down, and I'll do that for 1 more set. There we go. At this point, let's apply some color. Okay, I will save, and we're going to select the first one, and this is for the green, so I'm going to use the tint color effect, and there we go. Okay, it happened to be on that green by default. Okay, select that, tint, make that the red, deselect, and then select the next one, and we'll make that one the yellow. Just select my color here. There we go. These, I guess I can make a different red, so I'll just select that, and I'll just pick an alternate color. Here, let's go with the dark red maybe. Okay, and I'll do the same for this one as well. And it will adopt that since that was the last color picked. There we go. Let's just save that. Now we need to give all of these guys instance names. So we'll do that next. So I'll just call this one green underscore BTN. And I'll go over to this one, green stop. I'll use an underscore BTN. Okay, and then red underscore BTN. And then red stop underscore BTN for the next one. Red underscore stop underscore BTN. Okay, and then click on the yellow button. Yellow underscore BTN, and then the yellow stop button, underscore stop underscore BTN. Okay, definitely want to save that as well. Okay, I think we're pretty well good to go. I will label these actually with my background layer, so I'm just going to use my text tool, and I'll switch that to a white, and I'll just say I'll probably have to change the font here and stuff, but green, at least the font size. I'll keep that font, but I'll change the size. And let's see here. 14 is good, and I'll just relocate that below here. Alt click and drag. I'm just going to type in the word stop. Maybe I'll capitalize it. Stop. Okay. And then I can duplicate that set of text items. Alt click and drag, hold my shift key down to constrain, and do that twice, and then come in and change the color button names. So this one will go red, and then come over here, yellow. Okay. Save. I believe we have all of our basic elements done here. Now we'll start to apply some code. And the code's going to go in this top frame right here for actions. So let's call up our actions panel. Okay, so we're almost good to go here to effect control over this armature. The last thing we need to do though is actually label each level of nested movie clips. I believe we already labeled the top one here with an instance name. No, we did not actually. So let's call that one green underscore arm. Actually, you know what? I'll just keep it short. Green underscore MC for movie clip. So green underscore MC for movie clip. Now I need to go inside of that, double click it, and select, go to frame 1 actually, on here, and select that, and name that one red underscore MC for movie clip, because that's the rotation there. And then in here, because I want to control this timeline, that one right there will be called yellow underscore MC for movie clip. Okay, so let's just save all of that. I think we're good to apply the code now. So let's go back up to our scene 1 and select the frame that we want to put the code in, and I'm going to go to my wizard in my actions panel, and it's going to be play stop commands. All right, so we'll start with the play. Which movie clip? Green movie clip. Next, and we're going to say on mouse click, green button. Okay, so we're going to do the same for the stop. So we'll add using wizard. Stop. Green movie clip. Next, on mouse click, the green stop button. Finishing that. So let's save that and let's actually test that. All right, I'm going to hit test movie here. Now I will forewarn you, a major issue is about to present itself. I do have a very quick and easy solution, but get ready for this. All right, we're going to do a test movie here, and boom, the whole thing seems to be broken. It's like, oh my God, what happened here? So I'll tell you what happened here, but it is completely broken right now, but it's a fairly easy fix. Okay, so let's just switch back to animate, and we'll talk about the solution to that, what looks like a major issue. So I'm going back to my timeline. The issue happens to be, in this case, within my timeline for my buttons. So let me double click on the button here and explain the timeline. Now what happens is when JavaScript interprets this file, JavaScript always places the first frame as frame 0. Now in Animate, the first frame is frame 1, of course, but JavaScript changes it to frame 0, and everything is staggered by 1 frame. So that's why using frame numbers is not a good idea when you're doing stuff with JavaScript. Frame labels is a much better idea. Nonetheless, there's code in frame 1 here that has to do with navigation, and it's just not going to work in frame 1. So the quick solution is just to simply move that block of code into frame 2 like that. Okay, so I just dragged it over. Let's just save the file, and we'll do a test movie once again here. Very easy, right? I'll just repeat it because it's very important. Frame 1 shouldn't have any code. I believe you can still do a stop frame command, but the function will not work in frame 1, as frame 1 is frame 0 in JavaScript, and there seems to be a little issue around that. So let's do our test movie and just ensure. And there we go. We can take a breath again. And now while we're here, we might as well test the 2 buttons we just created. So I'll stop the green arm, and that worked. So, and the fade's working fine, and I'll click on the green, and that's the go button. So I'll go, stop, and you see the fades are working just fine. So all we need to do is apply that similar code to these other sets of buttons. But big issue again, when starting, especially inside of a movie clip, a nested movie clip, frame 1 is frame 0 in JavaScript. Let me just switch back to animate here, go back to my timeline, and I'll go back up to scene 1 and do the rest of the code up in this actions layer in the first keyframe. All right, so I'm going to add using the wizard, and I want to do again plays and stops. I'll start with the play. All right, so this one's for the red arm. So, but here's the thing. The red arm is inside of the green movie clip. So you're going to actually have to start with the green movie clip and then click in here and manually put the rest in. So it's called dot syntax. So after the first dot, after the dot, type in red underscore MC, which is the name of the movie clip instance name, and then put a dot here. So the way this works is that it goes from right to left. It executes the command in this movie clip, which happens to be nested in this movie clip, okay, on the timeline. And that's where the nesting comes in, and that's how you can control this timeline and surpass that timeline, if you will. So I'm telling the timeline inside of the red underscore MC movie clip to play. All right, and how am I going to trigger that? I'm going to click next for the trigger and say on mouse click, and this is the red button that I'm looking for. There we go. So we'll do the same for the stop. Add using wizard, stop, start on the green movie clip, but then go in here and manually put the name of the nested movie clip. Unfortunately, the wizard won't do that for you, but you just need to know the name and then put the proper dot at the end. And that's known as dot syntax. So this is a hierarchy, right? What's on the right is inside of what's on the left. So we will click next and apply the trigger on a mouse click. And this one was for the red, so we'll look for the red stop button. Finish. Now let me save this as I go. And I have one more set to do. Add wizard. Play. Again, we'll start with the green movie clip and then come in here and adjust this. Now this is going to be 2 levels deep. So we'll add the red underscore MC dot, and then we're going to add yellow underscore MC, as that is the instance name of the nested movie clip that's inside of red. And we're telling it to play. I'll click next. On mouse click. Let me just get rid of that. I don't know why that hint thing is there, but I'll just scroll past it. This is for the yellow. I'm just going to ignore that right now. Yellow button. Finish and add. Yeah, not sure why the code hints has stayed up there, but there we go. So I'll just do the stop now for the yellow. Add using wizard. Stop. Again, we start at the top level, and then we'll manually type our way down. Red underscore MC. So good names, easy to remember, will help in this case. And then yellow after the dot underscore MC, and then put a dot there. And if I click in there, it will get rid of the code hints. So yellow is inside of red, which is inside of green, and we're telling the timeline on yellow to stop. Next, we'll give it a trigger, mouse click, and it's the yellow stop button. And unless I mess something up there, which is possible, it should be good to go. We'll save and test. Okay, so I'll stop the green, stop the red, start the red. Okay, the red works, and now for the yellow, and the yellow is also working as well. So they can be triggered independently, right? You don't need to just have any sequence. I can stop the red and just have the yellow and the green going. I can stop the red and the yellow and just the green. So there you have it. These 3 sets of buttons are controlling the timelines of the movie clip. This set of buttons is controlling the movie clip that's nested in the green movie clip, and this set of buttons is controlling the movie clip nested inside of the red movie clip, and that takes us to 3 levels deep. All right, so that's how you can control nested timelines. And we also learned how to do reasonably good fade up buttons by actually creating a movie clip. And I think the huge takeaway here is that when working with JavaScript, be careful what code you place on frame 1. If it doesn't work, shift it over to frame 2, because in JavaScript, frame 1 is actually frame 0. Okay, and that is our assignment for today.